Karnani. Kiran Karnani. Kiran Karnani. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Wrong Advice Podcast. I'm your host, John Picciuto. I'm with the one and only Kiran Karnani. How you doing?
You know, it took me 40-something years to pronounce my name
You're not 40.
correctly.
I don't
We're not
believe
even
that.
going to talk about age. We're not talking about age.
That sounds like fake news. So it took you 29 years to pronounce your own name.
15 years or so to learn how to pronounce my name. But there's a story behind that.
I would love to hear it.
It's all about identity, right? Trying to fit in. So I had this name that could sound like Karen. It could sound like Karen. And as a child in New Jersey who grew up in a very Italian, Jewish, and white in premise.
Oh, right.
Yeah, neighborhood. This was before we saw diversity in our community. I was the only Indian child in school. So my teachers, reading roll call, and when they started to pause, I would raise my hand because I knew they couldn't pronounce my name. And so in 5th grade, I had a teacher that said, can I just call you Karen? I said,
no.
Okay, sure.
Oh,
I said, yes. I gave my power away at age 9 or 10, and I said, yes, call me Karen.
Yeah, it's tough.
And that lasted until I graduated high school. And then it was always, I don't know how to pronounce my name in a way that other people can also understand. Mm-hmm. So you would hear Kiran or Karen, and I would rarely correct it. And it was only maybe a year and a half ago where I think it was Stefan Vanesco who asked, is that really how you say your name? And I said, no, it's not. So he asked me.
He gets his name confused all the time too, which is really funny.
We've had conversations about that. But he was the first person that gave me permission to
correct people
and also to correct myself.
I love
and
that.
Allow myself to own my name. So now I use the pronunciation Kiran Karnani.
Well, Karen, can you give a quick introduction to listeners to who you are besides a wonderful Jersey native from premise?
Fair. So I am, that's such a loaded question.
Yeah, that's why I love it.
Well, it's a loaded question because I feel that everything that we say after the words I am is a choice and a responsibility. And so I take that with great reverence to choose the words carefully following I am. I am a mother. I am a marketer, a brand strategist. I am an artist at heart, a photographer. I am a sister, a daughter, and all of the above. More, I think what I feel that I truly embody is that I am a human being having this beautiful life experience and just trying to evolve to the full expression of myself.
I love that. I'm glad you sort of touched upon identity and understanding, like at a young age, like giving your power away, and how that sort of like translates exactly to the definition of like who you are as a person. What like age group, bracket, decade, et cetera, do you think you like fell into your own, like where you were like, I can identify as who I am? Because I know for me it was super late in life and like only in the last 5 years.
Only in the last 5 years for you?
Yeah.
I have a question. What do you feel happened in the past 5 years that made you feel comfortable to get into your space?
I mean, the world almost ending, probably.
Well, no, I mean, that was context, but
Yeah.
what specifically?
So I wish I had a really good like finger point moment to like dictate what it was. I think a couple of instances of growth via work, via life, via relationships, and age and time. Oftentimes I find myself saying like, hey, could 25-year-old John have learned 35-year-old John's lessons? Oftentimes the answer is no. So for me, I think it was just like a confluence of factors of age, lessons, life, and just like sort of evolving to a point where I'm extremely comfortable in my own skin. And, 25-year-old John was like, wearing 3 buttons open on his collared shirt, going to the club, and like had no idea what he liked. So I think it's just time. I think more or less the great mitigating factor to like being comfortable is time, unfortunately.
I wonder if it's more than that for you, because what I heard is you said something about feeling comfortable in your skin. And to me, that sounds like safety. That at some point you started feeling safe in your skin.
Totally.
And I've learned, and this is the same applies to my own life, that I also only started feeling comfortable in my identity maybe over the past year and a half. And that's through safety and finding spaces where I was safe to express myself or felt safe to believe in myself and to trust myself. And this context of feeling safe or you feel comfortable in one's skin, I really believe it all boils down to feeling safe to do so.
What made you feel safe in the last year or two?
I have a wonderful mentor right now who's
Same.
also the CEO of Harlowe,
Okay.
the company that I now work for. And she taught me the importance of believing in oneself, in trusting my own self, and she created the space in order for me to play, to explore aspects of myself that I was too afraid to in the past or didn't feel like I had the agency to do so.
Ooh.
And I feel like I can breathe and that I've got wings to fly in this space of safety. And so it's really about finding where you feel safe and allowing yourself to explore who you are, what do you like, what don't you like, what drives your passion, what motivates you, and what do your dreams look like?
Do you think like a healthy work-life balance sort of
Oh, that's a great question.
like created that safety net? Because like
No,
you had an awesome career prior to working for
did.
Harlowe, so I would imagine it was a lot of the same kind of feelings from a.
It's different. It's different. I had a fabulous career, right, at Leica. And I'll get into that. It's not. I don't feel that it's a work-life balance. I don't actually believe in work-life balance.
Really?
And I know that's strange to say. I have a background in my family owned garment factories, right,
cool.
in across Asia, and so it was a family business. So I grew up in a household where there was always constant talk about work. Work was life. Life
Yeah.
was work. My uncles, my aunts, everyone's part of this business. Same?
Not garments, but yeah,
But,
construction.
right?
Yeah.
So you understand,
Yeah.
right? So when you're at the dinner table, you're having
It's always
conversations.
on.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're always on. It's just part of life. And so I never separated work and life. Work is life. Are you familiar with with the book The Prophet?
Yeah.
Oh, you
Yeah, I read it.
excellent.
Yeah.
So Khalil Gibran, one of my favorite poets, has said that work is love made visible.
Yeah.
And so you know that if you love what you do, you're not really quote unquote working.
I totally agree.
And there's also nothing I feel wrong with this concept of working or being always on if your work is your passion.
Totally agree. I totally agree.
Oh.
It's interesting because like for a lot of my working career, I was chasing monetary gains and growth, and I need more and more and more. I need to earn more. I need to work more. I need to work harder, make more money. And then sometime around the pandemic when I lost my job, I sort of realized that I would rather enrich myself in other ways than money. Don't get me wrong, money's crucially
Of course,
important.
yeah.
Safety, comfort, the whole 9 yards. But I would rather do the things that creatively inspire me than, going to show up to a cubicle for, 9-10 hours a day because it's paying me a lot of money.
I want to get into, if you feel comfortable
Please
with
feel
it,
free.
with that moment where things started to come, like fall in and implode for you, right? You're losing your job. You get a job right before COVID. COVID hits, and all of a sudden, life
gone.
doesn't look the same for you,
Yeah.
right? How did you navigate that? Because your mindset seems to have carried you through that space with quite a bit of ease and grace. But I see that a lot of your growth also happened after.
For sure. Great question. First and foremost, family, right? Like without the benefit of having a tremendous support system, like nothing's possible in my opinion.
Yeah.
For people who don't have the wonderful parents and brother and sister and cousins that I have, like I understand why life can be difficult.
Yes.
So first and foremost, family, right? Without their help and their, guiding hand, like I don't know that anything's possible. And then the other aspect of it was, I think I was given a really generous opportunity from a severance package to explore time without any encumbrances to like a thought process. So I had a certain amount of months paid to do nothing except figure out who I am.
To be.
To be. Yeah. And with the benefit of therapy and time, and really for that, like, you know, whatever was a 3 or 4 month stretch, no stress, like I was covered. I gave myself like the space and like the realization that I could figure it out. There were days where I was like, I'm not getting out of bed. You know, there were nights where I was drinking myself to sleep. But like all of those things are learning experiences. Like I didn't know then what I would inevitably learn to realize that like anything I want to do and anything I want to create is possible so long as I do it. Like I think the best lesson that period taught me was this podcast. Why is it here? Because I started it. My photography business. Why does it exist? Because I started it. So if you don't take the chance, if you don't risk everything to do something that you're passionate about, you'll never get it. So I think what it really taught me was just to trust in myself, that I can create the things that I want to so long as I try. And if you believe that, you'll do it. It's like manifesting your dreams. I've done that. So yeah.
I really resonate with your experience. And how did you arrive? It's very easy for us to say, have self-trust, to believe in oneself. Sometimes harder to do it.
Totally.
In moments where you felt that trust waver, that belief waver, how do you harness that back and call that power back?
So I don't struggle so much with things like imposter syndrome and those kind of things anymore. I don't have that much self-doubt anymore. And I don't know if it's because of age or time or whatever the confluence of factors are that have led me to this comfortability. In any moment of self-doubt, I typically have like a process of like, not meditation, but like breathing. I'll work out. I'll write. Like there are things that like I dial myself back into myself to be like, okay, what's going on here? Like, why do you feel this way?
Yeah.
What is, oftentimes it's not the thing, right? Like if like I get a poor feedback from a client, it's not the feedback, it's something else.
Yeah.
So it's like figuring out what the actual thing is to then check it and realize that that's what it was, right? So like I missed out on a job recently that I didn't get. And I was bummed about it, but like, was I bummed about it because of a monetary thing or an ego thing? It was ego. So it's like when you start understanding the negative and why it's impacting you the way it is, it's easier to move beyond it. And that happens a lot with like relationship stuff too, right? So
I think it's universal, right? If you can apply that to every situation, whether you're going through a relationship issue, whether it's a work issue, a job, being able to identify what is the root of this experience teaching me, or why is it triggering me?
Yeah.
Oh.
How do you deal with the similar experiences?
Similar to you, where now I'm able to check my responses. Because I also have learned that the way that we respond to any trigger, whether that's a positive or negative trigger, determines our growth. Right. So if someone says something negative to me or is trying to, cause some harm in my life, right? How I respond to that person determines how I will evolve from that scenario.
Ooh, I like that.
Right? Which means that I believe I'm calling in all of these experiences so that my heart, my soul, my body can start to, I told you what I am, is I want to experience the full expression of myself. And the path to do that is to grow from the way that I respond to life.
Oh, I like that. I'm curious. So like anger management issues are things that like young Italian hot-headed John needed to learn about, right? Like how I experience something negative in the moment and not fly off the handle. I'm much chiller now. Like when I think about like the person I used to be like screaming, yelling, it's like crazy. It's not that serious. How has your own like personal experiences in like that initial like moment of negativity and being able to like transform that like initial reaction to like the longer understanding of like what you're experiencing?
That's a great question. And I believe it's creating pause. Are you familiar with the work of Viktor Frankl?
I think so.
Man's Search for Meaning?
Yeah. I read that, yep.
So Viktor Frankl has said that between every stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our freedom.
I thought I recognize this now. Yeah.
And so it's creating that pause and then making a decision whether you lean into it, whether you pull back from it, whether you act or you do nothing.
Yeah, I remember this now.
Right?
I love that, yeah.
And that pause is critical. And maybe it's harder to do when we're younger because we're quick to respond, that we're quick to react. Our emotions tend to overwhelm our reaction. But the more aware we become of how we respond, the more we're able to give ourselves the grace of a moment.
Yeah. I say give myself space. And
That's it. Precisely.
Yeah, and like, peace. Like, you should be so hard on myself. Like, for what? Like, why am I making life harder for myself? You've had like an illustrious like life, right? Like you've lived a very public life, right? You've worked for big brands, you've traveled a lot, you've seen a lot of things. How do you give yourself peace in times and moments where like maybe life doesn't really feel like it's giving you that chance?
Oh, a lot of meditation, breath work, pause and grace. I try to separate myself and become the silent witness of my life.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Well, because we're not often, our life is, we respond to life the way that we are, not necessarily as it is. And I believe it was Anais Nin that had said that, we see life as we are, not as life truly is. And if I can shift a perspective and pull myself back from a scenario and observe it, simply observe it, without the charge of it being positive or negative, I found that it transforms to wisdom.
Ooh, wow.
Right? But it takes that pull back. And it means that you've got to let the ego move aside for a bit, right? Not get emotionally charged.
That's probably the hardest
It absolutely
lesson
is
to
the
learn.
hardest
Yeah.
part, right? But the ego is what's injured, right? It's the ego, the inner child. Like, what are you triggering in me? But if I can pull myself away from that and observe it, you get less involved in the scenario.
I find that listen, don't get me wrong, I'm a creative. I like success. My ego is massive, but I found as I've gotten older, I guess maybe the hunger of it, like my ego, like the desire to feed it, has gotten dissipated. So I'm less impacted by victories as well as defeats, right? So I found like even in doing insanely cool things like interviewing you and meeting mentors and developing brand work and like doing things that I could only have dreamt of 5 years ago, the wins are mellower and the losses are also mellower.
The losses are more palatable, more balanced and even keel for you, which also helps to regulate your nervous system. And the more that your nervous system is regulated, the more your capacity to hold your creativity, your wisdom, you can expand in a much greater way.
I'm curious how motherhood has impacted your overall like view on life, because it's often, I mean, my brother's got 4 kids. My sister just had her first child. My cousin's got 2 kids. There's kids everywhere. Forgive me, I'm going to butcher the expression. It's like once you have a child, you're no longer living your life for you. You're living it for them, sort of like a thing.
I don't know if that's true.
It's a saying, right?
It's definitely a saying.
I didn't make it up.
Oh, no. I didn't think that you did. But maybe when I first had children, that's what it was. When their basic needs, they can't take care of themselves, right? Yes, of course. But as they get older, I do feel that being able to live your life that in a way that inspires you helps to show your children what's possible for their own lives.
Ooh.
If I can embody what joy, what happiness, what love, compassion, what all of that looks and feels like, I hope that sets as a model for my children of what's possible for their own lives. My children are my heart and my soul outside my body, right? But at the same time, I don't want them to feel that they have to sacrifice for love, that they have to put aside their own dreams, right? They can do this in safety. My goal is to give them spaces of safety in order to experience who they are, what they choose to do with their lives, and who they want to be.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. From a mother perspective and like tying that to your career, when you make a big shift, like career-wise, you're at Leica for like
10 years.
10 years. Like that's a very comfortable position to be in.
It was very comfortable, yes.
I would imagine there's a lot of risk, a lot of nervousness and trepidation that could go into a big move like that, especially like a public move, right? Like you're like a very forward-facing member of the brand. What was that process like for you in like making a big jump like that?
It's a big question. Can I give you a little bit of backstory
Please.
about my journey with Leica? So I started at Leica over 10 years ago as a marketing associate, right? I took an entry-level job because I found myself raising 3 children under the age of 6 on my own, and I needed to find a job that was within proximity of their school. I had a recruiter call me for a position at Leica, which was 15 minutes away from my home, and I ended up getting the job. When I got the job, I absolutely fell in love with it. How can you not?
Yeah, right.
It's a legacy brand.
It's romantic.
It's romantic. It's, the art of photography in the most purest form. And I was also in a space where the way that I wanted to explore marketing was provided for me. At the time, the CEO was Oliver Kaltner, and 6 months into my tenure at Leica, he had visited our office. He invited me in to present, and I was petrified. I'm 6 months in, I'm in an entry-level position at Leica, and he wants me to present marketing.
Yeah.
And I did. And he was so supportive of what I was doing. At the time, Instagram was not taken as seriously as it was now. And people didn't understand the marketing value of it at that time. And so everything that I was doing on Instagram and reaching out to creators was seen as like frivolous, like she's wasting her time.
Really?
What is she doing?
Wow, that's so funny.
It was at the early stages.
Yeah.
Right? Social media, we had just started our Instagram account. And so it was, it was an untapped potential for us.
Yeah.
Right? But
It's also like very exciting to be on like the cutting edge of like that moment, right?
But you don't know it when you're in it.
Oh, okay, yeah,
you know
that's
what
fair.
I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you don't know it when you're in it. And so what I was doing didn't seem like the obvious thing to do. Reaching out to photographers on Instagram, asking if they wanted to borrow a Leica, seeing what they create from it, building relationships, fostering community. It wasn't something that was the obvious thing to do.
That's so interesting. I mean, now that's so
it's interesting, but it was something that people scratched their head at and like, what is that weird girl doing? Right?
That's so funny.
But the CEO of Leica at that time actually thought it was a great idea. So he gave me an invitation to visit Germany, the headquarters. Again, I was 6 months into my job there. And from there, I took every opportunity to ask for a promotion, to ask for a raise. And the company supported it. I was very, very lucky to work for the President Roger Horn, my VP of Marketing, Roland Wolf at the time. And they just created the space for me to grow and believed in what I also was doing. So
This
I
is a
was
dream.
really lucky.
Yeah.
It was a dream, an absolute dream. Moving from Leica was not something that I was anticipating, right? However, I knew that I had to do something else for my life. Leica it's such a beautiful brand and an amazing community, and I absolutely loved what I was doing. It was my life. It was absolutely my life. Leica taught me how to chase light, but I wanted to embody it.
Wow.
And so I moved to Harlowe, where it's a very different experience, building a brand almost from the ground up. And that was the challenge that I wanted from my life.
That's awesome. That's super exciting. I mean, it's taking a big risk, right?
It is, absolutely. Yes.
Go ahead. I was going to say.
No,
Yeah.
it is taking a risk. And that was the moment that I had to ask myself, am I worth it?
Ooh.
Am I worth taking this risk? Is my growth worth taking a risk? And I chose myself at that moment, and was probably one of the only times in my life that I chose the path of fear in order to grow.
Wow. That's really beautiful.
Oh, it didn't feel that way then. It was scary.
You're how many years into this now? 2 or 3?
This is I just finished 1 year.
Oh, 1 year. Oh my God, it's so fresh.
It is fresh and it is exhilarating, and it's everything that I had dreamed it would be and more.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So when you look at something like a year in, you've clearly made it what was the right decision at the time. What does that validation feel like for you?
I'm not sure that it's validation. It's learning further and further how to trust myself.
Ooh, okay.
Right. So trust the inner voice, trust that gut feeling, trust when an opportunity is opening. Like you, I like to manifest and create my life, and I would journal. And everything that I had journaled was available for me with Harlowe and its CEO. And I had to move in this direction because I would have betrayed myself and everything that I asked for if I didn't.
I love that. That's pretty remarkable. It's funny because, I don't want to date myself too much, but like there was a good part of my life where like I just felt like manifestation was just like this foo-foo internet BS. Mm-hmm. But like sitting in a place that I literally couldn't have dreamt of, 5 years ago, living a life which, like, with the current state of the world, doesn't feel like the best time to be shouting from the rooftops, I'm super happy and my life is good. Yeah. It is nice to know that you can actually build out a life for yourself, for the things that you want, and your hopes and dreams can come true. It's almost taboo to say that, I think, almost like, because it's like, oh, manifestation is like this fruity little thing on the, like, no, it's real. Like, if you can envision yourself doing something, you can do it. You just need to take the risk. And have you always been like, maybe your aversion to risk didn't exist? Like, it sounds to me like you've always been one to like take chances.
Maybe not take chances, but do things in a out of the box way, right? Whether that was, connecting with community through Instagram, which was very out of the box at the time, or, I didn't have a linear path in my career either. Yeah. Right? I graduated high school, went to NYU, left after a semester to live in India for 6 months. Wow. From there was a flight attendant for a year. And so my life has these zigzags, and it's just not a linear path.
That's the beauty of life, I think. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, it could be, but there are other voices that are telling me, Kiran, that's not the way to do it. Kiran, you're not supposed to do things that way. So I've learned what I'm not supposed to do, but I'm trusting what I feel I'm supposed to do. Ooh. All right. And that also happens with the manifestation. So when, before I got the job at Leica, I started a new meditation practice, and I had a journal, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to put my intentions in this journal.
Love that.
Meditate and then write an intention down. And my first intention was, I just want to get a job that's close to my kid's school, that has great health insurance, and just can help me pay a few bills, right? Very basic. I wrote it down, and I got everything with maybe a few $1,000s of a discrepancy, right?
That's amazing.
But that was validation. And I'd started to trust what was happening. So I wrote a little bit more, and I started to get it. And I wrote a little bit more, and I started to see that. I mean, it got to a point where the exact figure was what I received in one of my promotions.
Wow.
And then I reached a point where I was scared to write what I wanted next. And I don't know if it's the same for you or anyone else out there, but I couldn't even write down the figure that I wanted because I felt, who am I? Who am I to ask for this? I don't have the experience to achieve this. I don't have the skill set to achieve this. What makes me think that I deserve it? Am I worth this?
Oof.
All of those questions played in my mind, and I wouldn't even write the salary figure that I wanted down on paper. And then one day I just pushed past that fear and I wrote it down. Oh, and that was hard.
Yeah.
That was so hard. Once I started writing it down and I started feeling more comfortable writing it, I started to feel it. I started to feel like, okay, I think I'm comfortable with this. I'm comfortable with the idea that this is something I can call into my life.
Yeah.
And once I started to settle into it and fully surrender into it, I actually got it.
That's amazing. I mean, listen, I'm fully embodying that myself. That's part of my practice as well. Like, write down the things that you want, say them out loud, call them into yourself. Like, it sounds so cheesy, but like when you live it and experience it, like, it's like, I guess the mentality for me was like, if I don't put it out there for myself, no, the universe is not going to give it to me.
100%.
How am I going to stumble into the things that I want in life without putting it down, without saying it aloud, without dreaming of it? If you can't think it, you can't do it.
You won't get it. You won't get it. I mean, and look at your life. You've been here 5 years. Look at your space. Yeah. Look at where you are.
Yeah.
And that's 5 years.
Yeah, it's nothing.
You know, if And I had that same experience where, okay, I've only have X amount of experience. How can I achieve this? It's all about believing in yourself, trusting yourself. If we don't believe in ourselves, who will?
Nobody. Literally, nobody. Because if you can't put yourself in a position to be successful and believe that you can do the things, if you didn't think that you could go to Germany and do marketing meetings with the CEO of, like, if you didn't think that you could take a risk and move to a startup and do these things, no one else is going to believe that you could do it. So if it doesn't start with me, how is anyone else going to believe it?
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just true. It's like you have to call into yourself and believe that you can do these things, and you can do them.
You must read the same books that I do, I feel.
So I only got into reading a lot maybe 3 years ago. My brother challenged me to read a book a month, and that was like 21, and I think I read 9 books that year, so I didn't do it. And then he challenged me again to read 2 books a month, and then in 21 or 2, whatever the year was, I read 13 books, so didn't do it again. And last year was the first year that I read 31 books. So
wow.
Did 2 books a month. My goal is to read a book a week, but it's just not possible. But yeah, I love to read.
So based on our conversation today, is there a book that you would recommend for me?
Well, I really like Man's Search for Meaning. I'm glad you brought that up. The Prophet also. I from a fiction perspective, The Alchemist, I think is like a magic book. I think even though it's fiction, I think it ticks the boxes in terms of like learning something from fiction. Nonfiction perspective, there's a couple biographies that I've read that I think kind of altered my brain chemistry. Although he's like a little bit of a shitbag now, Dave Grohl's Storyteller book was very impactful to me. That book did a lot to me. And another fiction book that like just altered my brain chemistry was Little Life. I don't know if you read that.
No, but I'll look into it.
Oh goodness. Get ready to cry. I think what that book taught me, and all books do, is that it's cool to experience life in many different varieties and ways. So whether you're reading about someone's biography and what their life was, whether you're reading fiction, whether you're reading a self-help book, all of these things I think open up my idea of what my life can be and then allow myself to fill in the blank, right? Like write my own chapter.
Beautiful.
So yeah, I right now I'm reading the Silo series because I love the show on Apple TV. I think it's a beautifully shot, wonderfully executed science fiction show. The books are even better. So I read sort of a little bit of everything.
And how does what you read influence the way that you see and make photos?
Great question. I don't know if books do, but movies do. I'm trying to think. So like I think after I finished A Little Life last year, a lot of my pictures are very depressed.
Oh, really?
Like I could just see like a dark tone to them. And I don't think the book is depressing. I think it's a beautiful book, but there was maybe that in the back of my mind. It is a sad book.
Okay.
It's very sad. But in terms of like I'll give you a good example. Like I think Severance is probably one of the most cinematically shot shows maybe ever. I think it's beautiful, and I'm starting to like get to a much cleaner, more refined portrait that I think is impacted by that. My experimentation with color is starting to develop a lot more than in previous years, and I think my desire to create better images is happening. So like I got a DM from a friend of mine who I had on my podcast like 2 years ago, who she was like, "You are getting so much better." And I was like, "Thank you." Like, I know, like isn't that exciting? Like I have a studio now, so I'm here 3-4 times a week. So every session that I book, every client that I get, I am getting better, and they're part of that growth. I think it's a cop out to say that like I'm inspired by life in general, but like I am. Like I like just the fact that
that's a cop out. I think that's fair.
It's a little cheese, but yeah.
It's okay to be a little cheesy.
Yeah. No, I agree. What inspires you from a photography perspective?
Oh, people, like what you mentioned, it's a co-creation,
Yeah.
right? It's these interactions, these conversations. Working at Leica, I was so fortunate to work with some of the masters in photography and these beautiful emerging artists and the spectrum, right? Stefan Vanesco inspires me, and
Yeah.
what I
Me
really
as
love,
well.
right? What I love about his work is that he's constantly growing, right? There's evolution to his work, and to me, just the process it inspires me to always see something different, and push a boundary here, or see past this and find something behind the scene, right? So his work is just mind blowing. Jason Roman has this.
Oh, stock easy.
It's just.
Also a podcast alum.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've always loved his work because there was an integrity to his work. And so I draw inspiration from his philosophy, the way that he sees, and his dedication to his craft.
Yeah.
I mean, he is dedicated.
Yeah.
And so that's really motivating for me. Maggie Stever is another mentor of mine who, just who she is inspires the way that I see, interact with people, and the projects that have been created as a result of our conversations. I mean, the list is endless, but people inspire me.
I totally agree. And so like Stefan was probably one of the initial entry points to me to like, oh, photography can be a career. Like I found him maybe in like the 2016, 2018, just like on Instagram kind of thing. And I followed him. I was like, wow, this is like unbelievable photography. I didn't even know I liked photography at that point, right? And having gotten a chance to meet him, talk to him, purchase his work,
Yes.
I've got a massive piece on my wall I have to show you. It's fucking awesome.
Which one did you buy?
The figures, the Subway figures. Yeah.
Yes.
But
yeah,
like
I bought his trees.
I printed it massive. Like it's like the size of like the whole wall.
Oh, I would
it's
love to
huge.
see that.
Yeah, I'll show you. But like what's nice is, and you were talking about growth, like, and even with Jason, you know, I met Jason a few years ago as well. Like I've followed him for a long time, and you can see how he's grown as a photographer and a director and a creator. And it's nice when I get that validation too. I can't imagine what it's like for them. I mean, they get it on a higher level from like a work perspective. They're working on bigger things than like I am, but that's not like a FOMO thing. They're doing incredible shit. Like good for them. I'm seeing it in my own work just on like an image by image basis, and that I find that super fulfilling. But one of the things that I've dived into a lot recently when you say people is like photo books. So I have a big compulsion for buying photo books.
What do you find yourself gravitating to?
Ooh, everything. So I've got a wonderful book that my most recent purchase was Avedon's Advertising. Actually, my studio partner bought it for me for my birthday. Just an incredible book. Just like the breadth of work that he had from an advertising perspective actually surprised me, because I really genuinely just looked at Avedon as the fine art photographer that he was, not even the commercial photographer that he was. When I look for a book, I really will just walk into the bookstore in my town and buy whatever I see. So I've got like obscure books from photographers who like don't even have Instagrams that I'm just like
Doesn't matter.
consumed.
It's the work that just speaks to your soul. Getting lost in a photo bookstore. Have you been to Dashwood?
No.
Okay, we're going to go to Dashwood. We're going to go to the city. I mean, we can spend hours in that space. It's just books that I've never seen before, that artists that I'm not familiar with, but you just get to discover a completely different world.
Yeah.
And get lost in the emotion of photography.
I find myself, so like, I think in order to grow as a photographer and a person that makes photographs, I have to learn about what's come before me.
Yes.
And part of that is like I spend an hour a night going through a book, right? I might have gone through the same Harry Benson book 5 times. I might have gone through the same, Helmut Newton book 5 times. Like I may have consumed the same thing a million times, but it's like, what am I today's, Friday, what is today's mood going to bring me when I look at the book? Like we had a very uplifting, enlightening conversation today. I'm going to be gravitating probably more to like prettier images, cleaner, and what can I then take that and put into my own photography kind of thing. I try to spend an hour a day going through this stuff, because I think without learning about your craft, whether you're digesting YouTube videos, whether you're reading about previous photographers, musicians, whatever it is you might be doing, like, I don't know that you can get to the level of work that I personally aspire to do. and
There was
create.
a saying, and I'm not sure if it was Maya Angelou, that in order to know where you're going, you need to know where you've come from.
Oh, yeah, it was
Right?
Maya Angelou,
And
yeah.
this paying homage to the greats, where it's not a story about copying, right?
Yeah.
It's about taking inspiration and understanding what they've learned, what they've created, in order to express something through the filter of your being. What I love what you said about that you can go through the same Harry Benson book over and over and over again, but you're going to get something different out of it based on where you are in this moment. So we're all walking around with a filter, our body, our mind, our soul. This is our filter. And it can get clouded, it can get clear, it can be upset, so all of these data points, the inputs are going to be affected by our filter. And so I love this idea of revisiting books that we have, just because we've gone through it, it doesn't mean we're not going to get something new out of it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be contingent on who you are right now.
I totally agree. I read a couple books every year again. So like I read Catcher in the Rye every year. I read The Alchemist every year. And I think some of these books that like I've read 10, 12, 15 times are different every time I read them because I'm different. So it's like this similarly when I consume, like when I watch movies, I'm a huge movie fan. I watch everything. That's not hyperbole. I literally watch everything. So it's like sometimes like I'll like one of my, whatever, like pie in the sky, like favorite movies, Secret Life of Walter Mitty. Ben Stiller shot a movie that was a remake of like a 60s or 70s version. That movie inspires me constantly. I could be having the worst day of my life. I could put that movie on and it feels like, okay, it'll be all right. Because I think like there are moments where a film, a book, a TV show, whatever your comfort insert media is, can like make the world feel good again, right? And for me, it's like that movie. It could be Catcher in the Rye. It could be The Alchemist. It could be any of these things. Do you have sort of like a comfort movie or book or photo book or?
I have trouble watching movies. My attention span is a little,
Well, I mean,
little short.
you're a mother. It's understandable.
I wish I could blame it on motherhood. It's just me.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
But books, The Prophet is one.
Yeah.
I love poetry by Rumi. Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. I can pick up every few years. Music does it for me, though. I notice that music and the energy of music can help shift a perspective. It can uplift a mood. It can really just change the trajectory of a day.
Totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I am. So we touched upon this before the podcast started. Like it is not lost on me the privilege that I have in my life, and like my life is really fucking good. And like I say that out loud, and I say it fully aware of the fact that the world is on fire and everything sucks. But like my little pocket of the life that I've created for myself is fantastic, and I think it's okay to admit that, right? Like it's okay to be like, yo, I'm killing it and I'm happy. And like, I want people to know that your life might suck today, but like 5 years from now, it could be amazing. So like, stick around, like hang out.
I love
that.
that.
It's like music. Like it's funny. I bought a record player. I had a record player. It broke when I moved into my apartment, and then I didn't replace it for like 4 years. I have a huge record collection. I just started getting into buying records again because I bought a new record player. Like my favorite thing to do is to put a record on and clean my apartment. If I told my mom that at like 25, she'd be like, you're the sloppiest, messiest person on earth. So it's like, there's a lot of beauty in life if we look for it and find it.
100%. It's all about our mindset. And yes, the world, look, there is a lot of challenges. There are a lot of challenges going on in the world. And there's also a lot of beauty going on in the world. And I do feel that we can choose the direction that we want to witness. I also feel the most important thing to do is to find that happiness within ourselves. It's very easy to watch the news and start to bring ourselves down. Who does that help?
Nobody.
But what helps the world is to raise your frequency, to raise your own vibration by keeping it positive, by keeping your energy uplifted. And then you can help others. You can create art that inspires others. You can have inspiring conversations that will motivate maybe your next photograph or piece of music or whatever you choose to do.
I have often said that I am a wholly unremarkable human being that embodies everything that's normal about life. I was born into an middle-class family in New Jersey. I worked not hard at all in high school. I played sports, went to an unremarkable university, did bad, figured it out, grow. And then all of a sudden you blink your eyes, like, I'm turning 40 this year. It's scary. It's terrifying. The old cliche of like your parents telling you when you're a kid, hey, life goes fast, like take a minute to like check in, was lost on me until like very recently. And I think there's so much that can get in the way of that, the external noise of social media or the news or whatever that's going on in the world, that you can sometimes lose sight of the fact that like your own little place can be okay. And it's okay to like celebrate your own little place being awesome.
I think it's more than okay that it's a responsibility to be able to celebrate.
I'll take that.
Well, why are we here?
Great question. Why are we here?
Well, I love quoting people. I came across this doctor, Dr. James Hollis, and he believes that nature, that human beings, that we're here for two agendas. The first one is to heal ourselves.
Okay.
And the second one is to experience the full expression of ourselves.
Okay.
And if we're able to accomplish this, we might just be a microcosm of what we're capable of.
That I agree with.
And in order to fully reveal who we are, requires that you celebrate yourself, requires that you give yourself those moments of joy, requires that you go after your passion, that when things start to fall apart, you pick yourself back up in the best way that you know how to do, and you persevere. As human beings, we have this incredible capacity to hold both darkness and light.
Yeah.
And it's our choice to find that balance.
Do you think it's easier to hold darkness than light?
I think that darkness can prevail, and it's harder to keep, actually, light can only recognize itself in the space of darkness. I don't feel,
I feel that a lot, yeah.
And I feel that we are also judging darkness. We're putting a maybe negative connotation for it, where what if it's the space for growth? The depths of the soil, the womb, it's complete darkness. But look what magic happens in that space. I
totally agree. I think the one really negative, terrible thing that you learn in life is that like it takes terrible things for you to appreciate what you already have.
So if we start to pull back from that and take away the judgment of why it's terrible, take away, yes, we're going to experience grief, sorrow, all of it. But we're human and we can overcome it. We can find a way to transform those experiences into something that is magical and beautiful and can show how we're able to grow. Transformation is one of our gifts. And when you talked about these past 5 years and looking back at yourself at 25 and where you are now, that growth is a sign of your humanity.
Yeah. Well, I like that. I forgot the doctor that you just quoted, the mindset
Dr. Hollis.
of healing yourself is part of like the tenets of life. I think that's something I wish I learned earlier, because like I'm doing it without conscious of the fact that is like a mindset or a thought process.
It's internal.
Yeah.
You're likely remembering who you truly are.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun because like, I didn't know what I liked 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 months ago. Like, if you don't ask the question, you'll never know the answer kind of thing. So it's like, for me, it's like what I try to do in these conversations, what I try to do with my career, with my life is like, just let people know that like, you can accomplish whatever you want. Almost whatever you want. If you want to be a brain surgeon, maybe you can't do that. But like,
I think you could. If you really wanted to, you'd find a way.
Maybe. Maybe. I could not be a brain surgeon.
Do you want to be a brain surgeon?
I don't want to be a brain surgeon.
That's why.
Okay, but yeah. What I'm saying is like, I think the great fallacy that we get ingrained in ourselves is that like everything is super hard. And don't get me wrong, everything that I've accomplished has been with very hard work and hard lessons. But you can do it. If I can fucking do it and I could be sitting with you having this conversation today, anyone can do it.
That's a huge lesson.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
I think one of the great things that time and life has taught me is that I don't need to measure myself against anybody else, and except for like who I was. And like it could be a day ago, a week ago, a month, a year ago. As long as I feel like I'm better than the person that I was, I'm winning. Right? I don't have to measure myself, my successes, my goals, my wishes, my dreams against anybody else. I do times, and we all fall into that trap, but I don't have to. And I no longer feel like the pressure to do that. How about you? Do you?
I love what you're saying, and I fully agree. By the way, that comparing ourselves to ourselves is the best measure of growth.
Yeah.
And it can be easy to fall back into comparison with other people, situations, and so on. But I think you and I had talked about, comparison is the killer of joy, right? Sorry, I forgot your question.
I was like, how do you particularly like match up the idea of like measuring your successes, your growth from like, a day ago, a week, a month, a year ago? It's like, how do you like internalize the person you are today versus, December 31st, 2024, like that kind of thing?
I never paused to fully recognize my growth. And while other people might say that, am I successful or do X, Y, or Z, accomplish X, Y, or Z, I never looked at it that way.
Oh.
Because again, I didn't believe in myself. I didn't feel that what I was doing was anything out of the ordinary. It was always right for me. But I always heard people telling me that I was doing things wrong.
Oh.
And so I was always trepidatious. I always, what's the word?
Trepidatious.
Maybe that's the word of asking for a raise or asking, right? It took a lot of courage to do that. And even if I got it, I sometimes didn't fully even believe that I deserved it, right? And so now where I am in the space of pure safety, there's a moment to look back and to recognize that things, 10 years ago looked a lot different than they do now. And it's a co-creation of not just me and what I envisioned for my life, but all the people along the way that helped open the doors, that supported, that also gave me some challenges so that I can persevere through them. It's only through my life imploding that I was able to rise.
Ooh, love that. Resonate with that tremendously.
But you've had the same experience.
Yeah. It's a normal experience?
I don't know. Well, no, mine was extraordinary.
Okay. Well.
It was absolutely not a normal experience. And
and just like some degree of implosion, implosion.
Yeah, it was a complete implosion,
yeah.
Right? I had to start completely from the ground up. And I had support. I had, my mother, my brother, my sister-in-law, they all took me in, and my children. And so, and then at Leica with, Roger Horn and Roland, right? Oliver Kaltner, they helped me grow. And so I could not have done any of this without the support of other people.
Yeah, I think so. There's one thing that I think that I've learned a lot as I've gotten older is like your network is your net worth. And like that network can be your family, because like I am going to be the unequivocal that without my family, I'm not here today. That without your community, where are you? And I think that's one of the nice things about what you're doing now is because like I think as social media changes and grows and sort of like how we view it, the landscape of it all changes to community. Because what I want to do is associate myself with people who are adding to my life and teaching me things and helping me grow. Less so, someone who can get me into the newest nightclub, right? You know what I'm saying? Like,
of course, yeah.
So while I firmly believe like I am not where I am today without my network, that sense of community, I think, is sort of like where the next evolution of like the social media experience goes. I'm hopeful for it because like I think that will be a positive place to go personally.
I completely agree with you. And I do resonate with it. Community it's everything. It's not a buzzword. It's not a marketing thing. It's real.
Yeah.
There's how can I say this? I love people. I love creators. I love photographers. I love when people choose a path of art, of following their passion, right? Even if it's a part-time hobby, whatever that looks like. And being able to connect people, bring people together so that we can share those experiences. I say that the light that we shine burns brighter together.
Ooh.
And if we can come together and share our experiences, support each other, you might have a skill here, he might have a studio there, and why don't we all come together and create together? Because what we create together is so much more powerful than what one person can do alone.
I totally agree. I think my last question for you is going to be like a little bit of a multifaceted, heavy, jaded, whatever, whatever you want to call it. I've gotten to a certain age, I think, where my mindset towards the future has like sort of disappeared. So like for me, like everything always when you're young is like, where am I going to be 5 years from now? Where am I going to be 5 years from now? Where am I going to be 5 years from now? Am I going to go to college? Am I going to get this job? Whatever.
Right.
At some point over the last 5 years, I've stopped asking myself that question. I'm really not interested where I'm going to be 5 years from now. I'm interested where I'm going to be like 5 days from now, 5 weeks from now.
Okay.
Like the landscape in which I measure my future has shrunk. So when you are sitting here today, we're freshly into a new year, and you look towards what your next chapter may be, right? It's unwritten. However much time frame that you look at, what are some of your hopes and dreams that you would like to manifest for yourself moving forward?
What are some of the hopes and dreams that I'd like to manifest for myself going forward? I want to be a source of light for other people. It's no coincidence that I work for a lighting brand that helps build this emotional connection between you and your light. I'm not. For the brand, I have goals. For the brand, I know where I want to see the brand and our CEO go. For myself personally, I want to be as fully present in this moment so that I can weave the future for myself and for the brand.
I think that's really beautiful. Listen, I have a really cheesy line. If you've been on my podcast, you're part of my family, so welcome. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. This has been a truly beautiful conversation, and I'm really appreciative of your time, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.